Here we are with day 3 of group stage. This is a new podcast called Chronobreak, where we break down the games that have happened within Worlds, particularly 2018. We'll see if this show continues later on. We're going to be covering group stage, quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, and just give you guys a little bit of insight into how the games played out and break down some of the big mistakes or big positives which a team went throughout the game. So I have here with me Jonathan Yee, who is kind of a connoisseur of the minor regions. You know, he likes to root for the little guy. And then you have myself, Izento, which, you know, I'm just, I guess, NA fanboy. You know, you could buy me with any money. By the way, we're looking for more sponsors, so just hit me up, you know what I mean? But anyways, we're going to be looking at day 3 of the group stages, and we'll be breaking down the draft as well as macro and just high level thought process on the games themselves. So without further ado, we're going to go with game 1 of Mad Team versus KT Rolster. So what did you think about this game, Jonathan? Like, just from the draft itself, where do you think this is kind of going?
Let me put up the draft for a second. Let's see. One sec. Yeah, so I thought Mad Team kind of wanted that Olaf. I don't know why, but a lot of teams have been prioritizing Olaf these roles. I think probably saw it probably a lot of teams have been using it in scrims, and that's why we've been seeing it a lot at roles. But so far, I haven't seen many impressive performances from Olaf. Especially when you consider the Mad Team, for example. They kind of want to play the scaling game. They don't because they first pick Kaiser, right? So you look from the perspective, they should want to play more defensively, scale up, and not get into too many fights. But then you have the weird second rotation pick of Lissandra, blind. Almost, okay, maybe not blind, but it comes right after the Aurelia.
So yeah, I was super confused on that. I was just like, okay, so you're gonna pick Lissandra in the second rotation, and this seems like something that was brought on from Cloud9 within the meta, yeah. But it was a response to Urgot, so I'm not really sure what the idea was here.
Yeah, and you look at Urgot was we've just banned as well, right? So maybe I'm not sure whether it's one of his what do you call it, the pocket picks or whatever, but I don't see much synergy with Lissandra and the rest of the lineup. So right from the start, I'm just a little puzzled. While KT had pretty much got what they wanted. The Leona was a pretty good pickup, considering they banned out the Alistar, and Mata plays a lot of Alistar and Tam Kench, so Leona is kind of like he's just something he's forced to go with. But I think it was a good adaptation from KT.
So what do you think about the Taliyah pick? Because as Taliyah stands within the meta, I think it looks kind of a problem in this group stage. So do you think this is kind of a bannable champion now, especially in the hands of someone like Score, who has proven that he's actually pretty adept on this pick?
Yeah, I think I would say so. So far we've seen Korean teams mainly pick up the Taliyah and doing really well on it. We saw Score on this game doing well as Haru on Gen G. So I think maybe I don't know if it's ban worthy, but I do think that there are some Taliyah is just one of the stronger junglers on this meta, right? Like she's not only AP, which gives you flexibility to get AD matchups in other lanes. We also get really quick wave clear, really good ganks early. So I think if you want to prevent the other team from getting an advantage early, I think you would want to ban the Talia, but otherwise, probably not. But it really depends on how the other team wants to play.
Yeah. So going into the game, it looked like the game was basically over at 12 minutes because
Pretty
KT
much.
get like a 4-for-1. What do you think Mad Team's objective was during this entire game? Like, do you think they just played it completely wrong in terms of macro decisions and what lane to play towards?
Honestly, I'm not sure what they had going in mind to the game, especially with the draft. And we kind of saw Olaf doing nothing, and you have decent. The thing is, they have decent ward control, vision control around the bot side with K, who I think is one of their better players. But there isn't much that Mad Team was doing at all. Like this is a tendency I've seen with a lot of the LMS teams, which mostly they just like to play uh, for the scale. They like to play for the team fights and late game, but their macro is a bit behind the other regions like the LPL and the LCK. So they kind of it kind of just looks like they're waiting to die, either for someone to make a mistake on the other side, or they're just waiting to die. And in this case, I think it's pretty much the latter. They're just waiting for their demise. I don't think they had any plan going to this game. I think I don't know. It is KT after all, so I don't. They might have been under the mentality that maybe you just won't. Which
You know,
is yeah.
we have a team that is just waiting to die in NA as well too. We call them CLG,
Oh man.
and guess what? They also pick Olaf as well too, kind of like Rainover. So I'm pretty familiar with this type of setup.
Yeah.
It looks like Mad Team just kind of rolled over in this game and just waited for KT to really close it out,
Yeah.
and I don't see a reason to really pick the Olaf unless you're going to try and be aggressive, especially on Lissandra 2 being level 6. It's just like, okay, maybe you can make a play somewhere else on the side lanes or in mid lane at least and try and blow cleanse, but we never really saw anything get rolling, which was
Just
strange.
nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that game wasn't very interesting.
No,
It was.
not too, unfortunately, there's not too much to talk about there. Besides, okay, maybe there's just one thing. It's actually not the first time that Mad Team have gone up against KT, but that game went quite differently because it was during Rift Rivals, and the KT went for the final Talia. UK was playing that Talia, and Mad Team just kind of went for the late game as well. In that situation, they just went 40 plus minutes, but then you could see that KT just outskilled them hard, and they're just a team that never seeks to make plays, which I find very I don't know. It's just I don't know if it's just a tendency of LMS teams in general because their games seem to go really slowly, but
Mhm.
they definitely do not. They are not really proactive as well. So I don't see them doing much.
Well, it's weird because everyone draws a parallel of LMS and China, right, in the
Yeah,
LPL, and that with Flash Wolves constantly scrimming LPL teams like RNG or EDG or whatever, then you would figure there are going to be a more fast-paced teams along the lines of LPL. So it's strange that Mad just doesn't come out as like this fucking mad cow disease and just trying to fucking rampage inside the
yeah,
game, but instead they just play super passive.
yeah. And I think we saw in the previous game against EDG as well. They actually tried to go for some plays, and that they kind of did okay for a while. But I don't know. It just goes back to if they're ever gonna be proactive with it, and now they don't like they have some chances against Team Liquid, I would say, but because we'll get into that later. But Team Liquid might look even worse off than they are right now.
Okay, well, speaking of Team Liquid, let's go on to them. My favorite NA team that are going to win Worlds. And wait, no, that's too ambitious. They're going to get to semifinals with my boy Po Belter. So, I believe him. So, we have their draft against EDG. Now, looking at the draft itself, you see that Xayah was banned, and it looks like North America, from just playoffs and from the regular NALCS season, Xayah wasn't necessarily a priority pick within North America. So them banning it doesn't necessarily hurt Team Liquid itself because they don't really play Xayah anyways. But we also see that Rakan wasn't picked either. And then, of course, you have Kaisa picked first rotation for Team Liquid, obviously. So do you think EDG punished well enough with this Lucian pick?
I think the first problem with the draft was that they get the Kaiser, but then after that they kind of want to play around double if, but EDG just says, okay, we'll 2v2 dive you at level 4, and we're just gonna focus the bot lane, and then the Team Liquid didn't really recover from that. No, they actually tried recovering from that, but I would say Lucian wasn't exactly the reason why Team Liquid lost the game, but it's mostly due to how Team Liquid play out the game later on that really led to their downfall. Mostly, for some reason they wanted to team fight a lot, and just skirmish even before Double Leaf had his items, and that's pretty much the reason why EDG was able to get such leads. It was more Team Liquid just throwing a lot of people at EDG for no reason, and especially during there was this point in the game where they went for Mountain Drake, right, and they just wanted to they got a Drake, and then EDG came over to collapse. They should have run away at that point, but they didn't, and Impact came outing in on the Scion, and then kind of pretty much trapped them in the Dragon Pit, leading to Scout just
I remember that.
sick play on the Azir. But at that, in the first place, Impact should not have come in. They should have just disengaged because they got the dragon already. They're not going to fight in the first, and also it's less the laning phase that was the issue, but just everything after that. The TL's ramp rotations were kind of out of order. They didn't really know what they were doing. They should be giving Double Leaf space to farm, but never really did that. He was running around with Ole and Xmiti for some reason in the red side jungle. I don't know what he was doing there. When it came time to defend the top tower, EDG just collapsed on them, and for some reason TL decides, okay, this is the time when we're going to be really brave. We're going to engage. When they had neither the items on Double Leaf, at that point he just had 1 or 2 items. He had nothing. He wasn't in a shape to fight, but everyone else seemed to want to fight, and the game was pretty much lost then because EDG managed to get a clean picks and just got Baron and the game.
Everyone says that 100 Thieves, they don't deserve the world's slot that they've been given, and some say that TSM should have been able to play, or maybe even Echo Fox. But little do NA fans realize that Echo Fox actually lives on in Team Liquid through their relentless head bashing into a wall of plays that definitely won't work out. And so they decide to do it anyways. And that's pretty evident in this game. But jokes aside, okay. So with the play early on at, I believe it was like around 6 minutes, right? Is EDG, they try and dive bot lane against Double Lift, right? And they go super aggressive, and TL ends up getting a 2-for-1. Yeah. And it's known that EDG is kind of this really aggressive team, especially iBoy. So with this, do you think Team Liquid can punish this on later on in the tournament?
You mean in the game against EDG later in the group stage?
Yeah, later in the group stage, because I mean, to me, it looks like, okay, you want to try and pick this super aggressive ADC in Lucian against Doublelift, who's a really seasoned veteran, and you think you're going to be able to shut him down with like this early aggression. So it's kind of a ballsy move in that sense. So I'm not really sure if iBoy is capable of doing that and capable of knowing when and when not to go in for trades in the bot lane.
I don't think there is much of an issue with that type, with his aggression, especially in the laning phase. I think it's more Mako's calls that he relies on his especially in this game where the Mako probably was the one who made the call to do the dive, and or even though they got away it's like 2-for-1. I don't think it went too badly for them. It's something that can be capitalized on, but I don't see TL really being able to do that. It really depends on their priorities at this stage, because I think they have way more issues to deal with than just iBoy.
Yeah, because I mean, you have Scout now who's popping off, and many had said that Scout is the reason why EDG is even here in the first place, going through the LPL and then finally the play-in stage, which he looked really good on. So do you think it's like just a big mismatch when it comes to the mid lane itself of Pobelter versus Scout?
I would say champion-wise, I think Scout probably has an advantage. But the thing is, Scout has always been known to be this guy who has had a pretty limited champion pool. He used to be able to play maybe 2 to 3 champions, and one of them was Azir, which somehow Team Liquid allowed through. I don't think I can't really blame them for that, but it does seem to me as though Scout might be just a bit better than Pobelter in terms of making plays. But the thing about Scout is that if you allow him to get ahead, he's going to take over the game, right? But Pobelter rarely fulfills that kind of purpose on Team Liquid. He's not been put on carry pants duty, right? Like other teams have done. And when you consider the fact that this is mainly an assassin matter, I think he's probably going to hurt Team Liquid in the long run if they don't start playing some assassins.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I feel that, because everyone's saying that Team Liquid's mid laner is probably the weakest point within the entire Team Liquid itself. So, and Pobelter's really not known as this assassin player himself. So it's not like you can then pick an assassin mid laner if, any other team picks something weak against it, like say a control mage. So I feel like that's one of the weaknesses in which teams are going to punish, but let's hope Team Liquid somehow shore this up.
It's possible. We saw 100 Thieves come back from a really bad game 1, so it's still possible for Pobelter to maybe pick up something, and or even on Rise, like he has his Rise pick,
It's
but
true. It's true.
yeah.
Yeah, he does look good on Rise, but what you're saying is that Team Liquid's chances are about as good as 100 Thieves'
At
chances.
this point, I have to say that because Team Liquid look lost in general. They don't seem to have a plan at the moment. They look I think they're really shattered by their loss against KT, which happens all the time to any teams for some reason. They lose one or two games and they just get really discouraged, and they don't seem to be have any faith in what they've been playing up to now. Like, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's one of the things that's pissed me off about North American teams. Like, all right, let me go on a rant here. Is that it seems like North America, whenever they come to a tournament, it's always okay. Well, what's good in the meta? What can we figure out about the meta? Okay, let's scrim other teams. Let's find out what they're playing, and then let's try and perfect whatever style that we play against. And it's not so much coming into the tournament and saying, okay, this is the style that we play. Let's go ahead and try and figure out whatever picks work and what can work within that meta, and then play towards that. It always seems like we're trying to just figure out whatever everyone else is playing and the style that they're playing, and then go from there, which is strange.
Really strange.
And maybe that's the fault. Maybe North America is just a bunch of copycatters. Like, you would think with China, having all those knockoff toys and shit, and like knockoff cell phones and stuff, you figure that would be the region that would be copying everyone else.
To be fair, China's made a lot of progress over the years.
It's true. It's true.
And they used to be really scrappy, really really look uncoordinated even sometimes. But I think this year they really come out way stronger, and I think it's something that teams from North America can should be learning from, is that you do not have to sacrifice what you're good at to play on the road stage, and Team Liquid just kind of pretty much sacrifice everything that they learned before, and uh, now I'm not even sure what they are. They don't look like a first seed at all.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they really have a lot of identity. I think you hit that on the fucking nail. But what a team does have identity with is Fnatic. Fnatic, they are looking pretty good, kind of. Maybe. What do you think after this loss?
Okay, so what what seemed to tip the game over for Fnatic into IG's favor was, for me, the counter pick on Caps, right? Because he had to blind pick the Swain, and IG just pretty much countered it with the Syndra, and once that happened, I think Caps is pretty much taken out of the game, because Caps he was playing as usually Caps does, which is basically to really hold on to his flash for until the last possible moment. He does things like this. He doesn't like using flash at all to escape. He likes to use it. He likes to make plays with the flash. But on the Swain, especially when he's on the losing end against the Syndra, I think it comes to a point where he can't really compete against the rookie, and you have to start focusing the map elsewhere. So what I Fnatic had a good uh, response to the early aggression from IG's bot lane and jungler, mostly because you see Ning, he comes straight bot at right one level. I don't know, really early on, gets a kill, gets kills, and then he comes back again, and then he gets another kill. This is another issue with Olaf, right? He just isn't around to either counteract the bot gangs, and neither is he actually doing anything across the map. Like, he tried to go path to the top side, but then he didn't do anything there. So pretty much Ning just got away with two free kills, two free gangs, and then Jackie Love is getting really fat. Uh, what saved the game for Fnatic was SOAS tipping to the bot lane to kind of save get the bot turret down and get kills for Reckless. I think that was a really good response. And you kind of see throughout the game, it's just Soaz trying to save the game, trying to be the superhero 1v5 because he needs to do it because nobody else is able to do it. Caps on Swain is pretty much locked down. He can't. The counter pick pretty much screwed him over. He Reckless he still needed time to farm, and he was doing okay, but I don't think he was anything. Hili-san was pretty much just inting as he normally does in the ULCS. I think this isn't anything that's unfamiliar to EU fans because it's kind of what he does. I don't know, he does it quite often apparently. So this is, although he was inting, he did try to make some plays. I think that's okay. At least he was trying to be proactive and all. So
Okay, so yeah. Well, what I want to know is, all right, I know everyone is going to blame Hillsong for this game and like his misplays, especially his play, where he tries to interrupt the recall of Jackie Love and then ends up dying.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad one.
Now, that's a little bit of a whoopsie, but it's like, okay, do you think this game rides on Hillsong himself and like his engages and kind of how he was stuffed? Because in the NALCS, what we saw when I think it was Aframu when he played Rakan was that he got constantly stuffed by Syndra, and that didn't particularly happen this game, but still it was just Hillsong not really knowing when to engage or how to engage, and then also his misplaced bot lane too. So do you think this entire game kind of rides on him?
I wouldn't say he rode on him at all. It seemed really bad from him, especially with how Jackie Love called him out. But the game to me was probably lost when this is something that happened in the TL game as well, which for some reason both Fnatic and Team Liquid they see the opposing team do a Rift Herald, and then they go for it, even though they are completely unprepared to contest it. They refuse to give it up, and they just send everyone to the Rift Herald. They die, and then the game is pretty much over from there because they can't. It was late in the game. It was not early enough that they could just sit back and farm up, but it led to several towers that IG got. They managed to snowball off the Rift Herald, and the resulting kills they got from Fnatic somehow coming in to contest it. So I felt the game was really lost there.
Okay, all right. So do you think that Fnatic have a chance to get first seed in this group after this game? Do you think Fnatic are still poised to get first seed? Because everyone has been saying, all right, it's either going to be IG or Fnatic. Most likely Fnatic first seed and then Invictus second seed. But now since we've seen the direct matchup, it's like, okay, well, Fnatic played pretty poorly against IG. So is it just nerves? Is it just Hillsong and Broxa? Or is it Caps just not getting the counter pick? Do you think if Caps gets the counter pick next time that Fnatic are able to perform? Because we saw Caps destroy on Aurelia yesterday. So it feels like this is how Fnatic get their pressure.
Yeah, so I do think Fnatic might stand a slightly better chance if they get on the red side and get Caps' counter pick, but it does reveal the fact that if they're not on red side, if they can't get Caps' counter pick, let's see, what other teams do we have in the group? 100 Thieves and G-Rex, right?
Yeah.
So you have, I don't think Caps will have too many problems against those mid laners, but if it comes to the IG matchup, they'll definitely need the counter pick to even stand a chance. But even then, they still need to. There's still the issue of, like you said, Broxa and Hidesang. They've not shown too much so far, and I think they either need to uh, prioritize mid more or have plan ready to get reckless ahead in the bot lane and not allow Ning to just dictate the pace of the game, because this is what Ning did. And and you can definitely take advantage of Ning, because at times Ning looks like he's just inting. There are times when he makes really bad moves or goes over aggressive, thinks he can invade the jungler for the third time, when you realize, no, you can't do that. You don't always have lane priority, and so there's stuff like this that Fnatic can take advantage of. But as for whether they can get first seed, they'll need to sharpen up their players a bit more. I don't think Fnatic is in much danger of dropping out of the group stage, but they do need to have more solid gameplay if they really want to stand a chance.
Okay, so it makes me question Fnatic, or more so in the matchup versus G-Rex, because if we think about this hypothetically and we do the whole transitive properties, right? This is everyone's favorite game, transitive properties, and you say, well, Candy actually did pretty well against Rookie during that reverse matchup of Aurelia and Syndra yesterday. So with that said, do you think Candy stands a chance to kind of stifle Caps in terms of the mid lane matchup? Or do you think it just solely relies on getting the counter pick instead?
Okay, so Candy, I think, is pretty solid mid laner. He doesn't go for insane outplays. But he's a very solid laner. He's quite unlikely to give up kills easily. Especially when he paired up with Empty in the playing stage, they're really solid synergy with each other. And with Bebe though, that it comes the issue with the 2v2, right? Like, you have Caps and Broxer and Candy, and I have no idea which jungler they're going to use, but they use Bebe today. If we take the example of, if they continue to use Bebe in the group stage, it might pose an issue for G-Rex, because Bebe is kind of just someone who farms all the time. He I don't think he has much synergy with any of his other teammates, and he just tends to do things his own way. So, which kind of puts G-Rex at a disadvantage, right? We'll get into that later, but if you think about it, Candy is gonna be left in the lurch, if it comes to that. And I'm gonna be pretty concerned about them if they continue to use Bebe and Candy doesn't get an okay matchup against Caps, because then he's gonna get capped, like, for real.
Well, gonna be brought to the hood, doing a drive-by with Caps. Okay. Well, speaking of hood shit, we got 100 Thieves versus G-Rex. Now, with this matchup, I guess the number one biggest thing we have to ask is, you give Urgot to someday, because maybe you don't think he's going to carry on it. Maybe you think you could take advantage of that weakness top lane, but turns out they couldn't.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know why G-Rex give up the Urgot pick. It seemed kind of, I think perhaps they weren't so concerned about it, like you said. But it turns out that they weren't really equipped to handle it. But I think it was more of an issue with the rest of the team just not being very proactive in general. And even though they gave up the Urgot, but they got very little out of it. Again, they went for the Lissandra, which somehow came out again. Maybe they wanted to counter the Urgot pick with the Lissandra, but not only did he not go to the same lane, he also functions as sort of a counter to LeBlanc, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong. And maybe they thought the Lissandra were able to handle everything, but it turned out that wasn't the case. And
I mean, okay, so there seems to be this weird meta to where teams want to pick Lissandra because they saw their hero Licorice choose it. I guess he's this superstar player that is just dictating the meta from North America. I don't really get why Lissandra is being super picked right now, because it doesn't seem like a lot of people are practiced on this pick. I don't know how much people have practiced on this, but not only that, I see teams picking Nautilus. And Nautilus is this very new pick, especially for all these support players. It was more known previously as a top lane pick. So I don't expect a lot of bot laners or support players to be practiced in this. And we saw this from Koala, and he just didn't really look too hot on it. So, like, do you think Nautilus is kind of this trap champion along with Lissandra?
Well, okay, so the Nautilus pick, I could see in theory how it would work, because I think we saw, there was a team in the playing stage that used the Nautilus. Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
So EDG used that to counter the trash pick, right? And they did it really well. They pretty much nullified the trash influence, and EDG pretty much won the bot lane off that, almost single-handedly off the Nautilus. Being super tanky, he has a lot of upfront damage. He's I don't think he's a bad pick per se, especially into the trash. But if you're looking for picks, Nautilus is someone who mostly get them towards the end of the laning stage, when other laners have their ultimates and they're ready to come down and set up ganks. But we didn't see much of that at all. So it comes back to the issue of the jungle, which I alluded to earlier, with between Empty and Bebe. I think Bebe is someone who does not seem to work well with Koala at all. He's supposed to, in theory. If you look at the theory behind the draft, I think it makes some sense. You have Nautilus starting up the pick, and just have Lissandra and Nocturne both dive into the same target, and theoretically you will get a pick of that. But not only is Zaya a really slippery pick in general, she also has the thresh behind her to save her in case anything goes wrong. And adding to that, Bebe, compared to Empty, has zero synergy with Koala, and they generally tended to do completely different things. And I think that was a pretty big factor into why the Nautilus pick seemed pretty useless, because they just couldn't coordinate well enough to use the picks, the drafts. I mean.
So Rikara looked pretty good on the Zaya pick, because as you said, there's a lot of safety with the pick itself, and then you have the Thresh synergy as well too, to help you escape out of another bad situation if that happens. But more particularly, it looked like Someday and Aframu carried the fuck out of this team, like super hard. So do you think realistically 100 Thieves escape out of this group? Do you think they have a chance out of Group D after this match if they continue to play like this?
I think they showed a lot of improvement from their first game. They definitely had a plan going in that they wanted to play for the early game. They had Anda on the Xin Zhao, which I think really suits his playstyle well, because he's for a jungler like him, he wants to get a lot of early game aggression, right? He likes to go around the map and assert his presence, and that is something I think he did pretty well. And you add to that, you have Ryu on the LeBlanc, who I think played really cleanly as well, along with Someday and Afro. So you had, when you have these 2v2 synergy with Anda and Ryu, it helps a lot when the mid laner actually is actually a champion that you can set up kills on, especially early game. So if if 100 Thieves continue to have such more proactive uh, matchups where they don't just kind of sit off and die like they sometimes did, because the thing about 100 Thieves going to Bros is that they didn't look good, right? They had this whole controversy with benching Meteors, and then they get Rikara in out of the blue. There was a lot of turmoil, I think, within the 100 Thieves, and
Well, okay. Let's talk about that. Then, do you think Meteos would be better in this circumstance? Do you think Meteos would actually do better on the stage against, say, a team like G-Rex?
okay, so Meteors, I think he's someone you want for the group stage environment, because he's obviously he's a really experienced player. He has his own voice. He also isn't someone who just make really silly plays in the early game that will make a team go behind, right? And considering all these factors, on average, you probably want to have Meteors around over under, but what he might suffer in Meteors is the fact that he could be exploited, because he is someone, I believe, seems to prioritize efficiency and farm over having a presence on the map, and he's also someone who tends to play in a way that he's more confident when he has items, right? Like he needs farm. Without farm, he's not gonna try to do too many things. So if you take that into account, and take into account the fact that many teams are relying on this early 2v2 synergy to get ahead, especially the LPL teams, there is a case to be made for under starting right now. Even if they had let's assuming they had the choice, you might you might want under over Meteors for the group stage at least.
Yeah. So I mean, that's probably been the biggest criticism of Meteos in the past, right? Is that he's been this jungler that won't go for even the 60-40 play. He'll go for like a 70-30 play or an 80-20 play, but he won't really even go for like a 60-40 play. And I think that was one of the biggest criticisms of him within North America. And in the group stage, when you're 100 Thieves, it seems like you need to take more risks, which, looking at 100 Thieves themselves, they aren't a very risky team anyways, right? They're always a team that wants to play for the late game, and they aren't going to be like one of these early aggressors or whatever. So do you think within this entire group itself, Group D, will they be kind of inhibited from their lack of early aggression against all these other teams?
You mean you mean with Meteors or with Under?
No, with Anda.
With Under. Okay, so I believe if they continue to play in the manner that they did today, they might stand a chance against other teams. I don't think they stand too much of a chance against IG regardless, but there is the exploitable factor that Under can look to exploit out of Ning. So I right now it really depends on what they want to prioritize, right? Do they want like we've seen that they're very willing to adapt their game to playing more aggressively early. So if they continue to do that, I think they might stand a better chance.
Okay, well, let's move on from trash teams, and let's go on to a real team. Let's talk about RNG versus Vitality. So this game, everyone expected RNG to stomp, like even from the beginning of the game, and then you also let RNG get Urgot. I'm not sure what the problem is with these teams letting Urgot go, but it looks like they're more afraid of Uzi getting these either hyperscaling carries in Kai'Sa or just lane dominance in Xayah. So do you think the draft idea or philosophy from Team Vitality is the correct one?
It's a bit hard to tell because if you look at the RNG, it almost doesn't matter what Let Me picks because he's someone who can play a variety of different champions anyway. He pretty much plays anything the team wants him to. He can even play carry champions, but although RNG hasn't historically allowed him to do that, he mainly did that at the Asian Games where he was kind of unleashed somewhat. Back in his original team, he's someone who just plays whatever the team wants him to, and if he can get a god, great. But it is the case that even with a god, that it is possible to beat RNG. But I think Vitality saw the games against IG at the what's it called, the LPL Summer Finals, and they saw that IG managed to beat RNG even with RNG having the Urgot pick. So I think they're probably more confident in that respect that they would be able to nullify whatever advantage. But the thing about Vitality in this game was the fact that they kind of went with the Kindred, which
so I was questioning that because, all right, everyone knows that Gragas is kind of the counter to Kindred, like not a hard counter but a soft counter because of the ultimate. So it's strange that you would pick Kindred in the second part of the draft phase against this Gragas. I don't understand that, but maybe you think they were trying to protect the backline with the ultimate from Kindred for the Azir, or I don't really get it.
I honestly have no idea what went into that pick, and I don't think I can make any guesses as well because of how difficult it was for Kikis to really do anything in the game. And something that really bothered me was how Kikis just never really puffed to the bot side at all, and he pretty much let Uzi have his way, which is the last thing you probably want to do if you're any team. Like, I don't think there's any team in the world who will allow Uzi to just sit back and farm and allow him to get a lane advantage and just sustain that as well. He got 3 items so quickly, and the moment he gets 3 items, ING can pretty much engage whenever they want. They will win any fight. they pretty much they could pick. All they had to do was wait for Uzi, get his items, and they could start contesting every objective. Vitality were no chance, and that I think is probably the biggest failing of Vitality in this game, is that they completely neglected Uzi, and they chose instead to prioritize cover shot, which I find really questionable. Because he's not gonna solo kill Uzi.
Well, like I always say, that old adage is good to be the king, and they just let Uzi have whatever the fuck they paid the tariffs, they paid the tax, and giving it to King Uzi, just like, you know what? Yeah, sure, raise the tax 10%, 20%, whatever. Kind of like Germany with their insane tax. Like, okay, yeah, sure, you can have it. Although, all right, Vitality's French, so I don't know what French have with their taxes, but. So, all right, so you let Uzi have his way with you, but yet you pick the Varus as like this early lane aggression. So with that, do you think Vitality could have actually won this game if maybe they were to send their jungler bot lane and try and put pressure for Uzi? Because as a lot of people also say with Tristana, is that she's very difficult to CS under tower because of her passive and everything. So maybe if you can take advantage of that, there's a possibility.
Yeah, because if you look at how the game was going at that point, right right after Uzi took the tower, they still had a decent lane. They still had a decent CS parity. They weren't that far away from Uzi. The problem came was that the problem came in the sense that they Kikis went for a gank mid, right, and he just he didn't expect the 2v2. They Kasa was around. They Xiaohu managed to turn around the gang, and then he just went a bit behind after that. So a failed gank followed by Kasa just parting bot side. They just had their way with Vitality's bot lane. So stuff like that is I would say perhaps they will have a slightly better shot if they actually tried prioritizing the bot lane more, because like you said, Vera's early game, strong early game, definitely not something that Tristana can handle if played right. As well, if taking into account the fact that Kindred can possibly make a good dive bot side if she reaches level 6 also. And taking all this into account, I don't think they probably would have had a slightly better time of it if they actually prioritized the bot side more. But
So
they just didn't play to their win conditions really.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think that Uzi, just within this group stage already, that he has the legendary buff, that I like to call it, in which Faker actually had this buff, and that whenever anyone laned against Faker, they were super scared of him. And any team that went against SKT, they were just scared of Faker. So they tried to kind of tie him down. And with the draft phase from Vitality, and you saw them banning Kai'Sa and Xayah, it's like, okay, we're going to keep Uzi down no matter what. Yet the game plan, it seemed like Attila, it didn't play that aggressive. So do you think there's like some kind of like mysterious buff for Uzi when it comes to the lane phase?
I don't know, perhaps because I don't know. It definitely Vitality did not play up to what they seem to be capable of in previous games, where they just went really ham. They tried to force plays all over the map, even when they weren't supposed to. We saw very little of that this game, and maybe they're wary of the fact that they had thrown their last game against C9, and then they thought they had, okay, we don't have to be this ham all the time, right? But I think in trying to alleviate the fact that they threw a lot, they might have just succumbed to the Uzi path a bit in this instance. They might. I don't know, but I can't tell you what it's like to play against Uzi, but it's probably really oppressive because this guy will challenge you for every single CS. He has no qualms about trading with you. He just wants to assert lane dominance no matter what matchup is in. So perhaps they did feel a bit of pressure. I don't know.
Well, let's talk about the most oppressive laners and players within this group stage, which is Licorice, that everyone seems to be completely afraid of. His Lissandra has gone across borders, and he's just made people completely terrified of him. So with this draft, you see that Cloud9 actually get Urgot on the second rotation. And I'm not sure if this is just a freebie from Genji, and they're just like, hey, we feel sorry for you, you're an NA team, you could use a win. Like like what is this draft? Why do people feel as though they can let Urgot pass? Like, we've said it again and again throughout this entire time, and I don't get it.
I think Korean teams are the sort that rather than just ban out a champion they don't like playing against, they rather have them play it, and then seeing if they can counter it, especially in a situation where they're relatively safe. I think despite the fact that Genji are 0-2 at this point of the group stage, they didn't seem particularly stressed. They even the fact that they allowed Urgot to probably means that they had some sort of counter to it, and he saw them pick up the Poppy, which I wouldn't say is a counter per se, but it's definitely someone who can hang in the lane face with Urgot. I yeah, so and they also had the Aatrox, which they could have easily flexed to top lane if they wanted to. So I suppose they had a plan to deal with Urgot if they were willing to let him through. And generally when it comes to these situations, when it comes to Korean and Chinese coaches, they do tend to set up traps for the other team to take. And maybe this is what they were doing. I'm not sure, but definitely they didn't seem really afraid of the Urgot.
So a lot of Korean teams are having this priority for Talia, right? She's been rampant in solo queue. She's been prevalent in, in the competitive scene over there. So with this, it looked like Talia was also a flex pick as well, especially with the Aatrox too. So it's like you can flex both of them at the same time. So do you think Talia being as a flex pick, like what do you think about Talia as her power as a champion, and then also the ability for these Korean teams to flex it? Do you think it's just completely OP in that regard?
Um, yeah, I'll say I OP perhaps. It, I think Talia has a lot of strength early game. Like I mentioned earlier, she with her wave clear and ability to set up ganks in the early stages. I think she's definitely someone champion which is a threat to any team that's facing up against her, and she could easily get out of control as well if she gets ahead. But in I'll say in she's not OP enough that you have to take out like, but considering I don't really see her as much of a flex pick as I used to, because Talia is pretty maybe she was really strong in the mid lane before, but right now in this group stage we haven't seen anyone play Talia yet, and so it does seem like she's less of a threat of being flexed than we might
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Okay, so with Blabber subbing in, do you think this was the right call? Do you think Svenskeren couldn't have handled Haru?
I suppose they were trying out Blabber this time because they wanted to have more of an aggressive early game. And after the match against Vitality yesterday, they were pretty much mentioning, oh, we have to be more aggressive in general, and it's something that Reaper has been stressing a lot. Uh, so, in probably from his point of view, he thought that Blabber would be the better choice to because he's a really dominant shot caller in the early game. He likes to make plays and sometimes go a bit too aggressive, as we saw during the game. But I don't. In on hindsight, obviously it didn't work out. But I don't think they had uh, the theory wasn't really unsound. I wouldn't say it was a mistake to have him play instead of Sivan, but the fact is that Sivan probably would have. Speaking on entirely to 2020 hindsight here, he might have gone a bit better against Haru, but you have to take into account the fact that Haru was pretty much he pretty much gauged where Blabber was most of the time, and he managed to arrive for ganks, counter ganks, pretty much every single time that Blabber was around. So I don't know if Sylvan would have had suffered from such a scenario, but it's just one of these things where you can't really tell until the game plays, right?
Well, you
And
know, it's ironic that you say 2020 because at 2020, Blabber makes the misplay, which ends up giving up Baron and allowing Genji to take the game. So, in some senses, you are just holistically right, both in the metaphoric sense and a literal sense. So, I would definitely agree with you there. But do you think that this is going to be kind of the Achilles heel for Cloud9 in the later parts of the group stage, of them thinking that Blabber's aggression will reward them, but instead, with teams being so conservative, since the stakes are so high in this big of a tournament, that it's just going to bite them in the ass?
it might. It might. I do think Reaper will have a lot to think about after this game, because the trade-off is probably not enough to justify not playing Sylvan, because of how much more, I don't know. He used to be the guy who pretty much int in the enemy jungle, but
Yeah.
now but now he's having pretty decent games. He's not he's not really the Sylvan he was 2 years ago on TSM. So if it's a tough call to me, because Blabber is actually, he has a lot of potential, but it might not be his time yet.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, looks like North America doesn't really have a whole lot of hope here coming up into day 4. Although we did get the
They
win,
got a shot,
you know,
yeah.
with 100 Thieves.
I think Sina has a shot. Like there are things that they have to work on, but they seem to be getting there slowly. The only what I was more concerned about in this game is that the 2v2 between Crow and Haru and Blabber and Jensen was not a matchup that C9 should have lost, because Crow actually wasn't playing that well. He despite the fact that uh, it was the first time on his Aatrox pick. I think Crown is not actually a proficient player on these sorts of champions. He's just not an assassin player in general. He never plays assassins, not even LeBlanc. And the closest thing he has is a Syndra, which we saw pretty much get slaughtered on the day 1 group stage. So the fact that Genji still managed to win these 2v2 should be pretty concerning. And Jensen, I don't think Jensen is he's definitely underperforming right now. He's not doing. There are a lot of things very tiny mistakes that I suppose due to his sickness that he's still trying to get over. But he definitely needs to step it up a lot if they want to have a shot at getting on a group stage. So right now it's just plain. There's mechanical errors on the part of Jensen that are really holding them back, to me.
So, all right, final thoughts. What do you think about a Freak of Freaks? Now, I know they didn't play today, but everyone is questioning a Freak of Freaks' ability to get out of Group A. And we saw them yesterday play, and it didn't look too hot, but we're all on the fence, and we thought that a Freak of Freaks would actually play better than they did before. So this last question mark, where are we at on them?
Okay, well, Freak of Freaks seem they this is something I haven't really prepared for for this question, but I'll try to have an answer. But what I thought about Freak of Freaks was that they excel a lot in preparation uh, for upcoming games. They have that reputation in the LCK for being one of the most prepared teams. They'll come out with really weird picks, weird counter picks, weird plans. They have a lot of researched plans they have for, especially for the early game. But we saw very little of that in the group so far in the group stage. They've pretty much come in looking like headless chickens. They don't seem to have planned. Once again, Spirit was on their Olaf, which I think is just garbage at this point. It's just plain garbage. I don't know why teams keep prioritizing it.
Well, he's looking like EU Spirit rather than KR Spirit. So
Spirit, indeed, yeah. And I don't. It's probably not his fault alone, but the team does look a bit lost. And
okay.
I really don't know what they're gonna show us from here, because they as far as I know they it's a bit of mystery right now what they'll pull out later. It could be good, it could be bad. You really have no idea. Just the fact that they're 2-0-2 right now is completely unexpected. So I couldn't give you a good answer as to how well they'll do the rest of the tournament, or whether they could even get out. But if I had to bank on something, it would be that they might just squeak through if they have a better idea of the meta, because I think they came in not knowing too much about what the current meta was, and I think they've suffered for that. So if they manage to get their adaptation in time for the second part of the group stage, they might still be able to squeak through. But I'm definitely not looking too good for them at the moment.
Well, it seems like a Freak of Freaks are like this question mark, this big question mark, but at least that's better than NA being a question mark ping. So signals enemies are missing. So that's where we're at with NA, and maybe they should bring up their flame and toxicity, because it seems like everyone who's toxic ends up winning, except I Love Uv, who just entered his drafts the entire time. So he'll probably get reported. I don't know.